Well, hi folks, welcome to this unique event with Agile20Reflect Festival. Sorry for the slight delay, just a few technical issues with people joining us, but I'm Sath Pal Singh, everybody calls me Sath. I'm your host for this session, and I'm delighted to be joined by my co-hosts, Sabrina Bruce and Shelby Wilson, and the three of us are trustees of the festival. So very warm welcome to you. I'm just going to go through a few of the formalities before we get to the reason you're all here today. And it is wonderful to have so many of you joining us. So, yep, this is an Agile20Reflect event. Hopefully many of you joined the wonderful opening ceremony we had yesterday. Great to see so many of you on. It was a wonderful occasion, very warm, very fun, had a great community feel to it. So it was a delightful start to proceedings. We do have over 600 events in the program worldwide, as I think many of you know. You can see that on my slide there. We have a kind of hashtag there for you all to use and the URL for the website. So do go on the site and peruse the program. There's a diverse range of events available for you all across a very wide-ranging subjects. So hopefully there's something for everyone. And of course, a shout out there for our supporting orgs, just at the top of the slide there. So thank you to all of them for their support. And a shout out for Agile Alliance, as we have Ellen Grove with us tonight as one of our guests. So just moving on quickly here. So yeah, just to reiterate, all of the events in this program, all of us who are involved in the festival have agreed to adhere to the community policy. So just to remind everyone, you can find that on the website if you'd like to take a look at that and read that in more detail. But it's very important that we're all aware of that and we all support that. We want everybody to have a great experience. And ultimately, we're looking for everyone to just be supportive and respectful of one another. And if you would like to donate, this is a free event. It's a free festival. It's all been built by volunteers around the globe. Should you wish to make a donation, you can do so using this URL here. Yeah, and lastly, this is an extension of the opening ceremony that we had yesterday. So, yeah, I think officially declaring the festival open as of yesterday, and yeah, very much looking forward to sharing the experience with you all over the coming weeks. So I think that's the formalities. I'm going to stop that share now. So we're all gathered here today to share an experience with our festival patrons. And it gives me great honour to be doing this today. I feel great privilege to have this opportunity. Our patrons have been tremendous supporters, encouragers and advisors of what we've been trying to do in this festival. And of course, they are our patrons because they've all made incredible contributions to Agile over the last 20 years. And, you know, we look to them and we seek their guidance, and many of you have their books in your homes, I'm sure. And tonight is a great opportunity to have them all together on one session and learn a little bit more about them, get to meet them, and you all have the opportunity in the second half of the session to pose some questions. So in the first half of the session, I'm going to ask them all just to introduce themselves. And hopefully we can get through that in about 30 minutes or so. We don't know, but that's okay. Johanna's looking at me going, oh, that's ambitious, Seth, that's ambitious. And then, depending on how that goes time-wise, we will then take a short break, 5 minutes or so, because it is quite a long session. And then thereafter, we will give you all the opportunity to ask questions. We like to facilitate that process because it's quite a large event. There's quite a lot of you on the session. So my co-hosts have arranged a kind of little Miro board, however you wish to say it, and that we're going to use to just facilitate the conversation. So we'll share that link with you in the chat. If you could then add your questions onto that board against the different patrons, the questions you're interested in, we will then facilitate that and answer questions in the second half of the session. We are short of time, so we're unlikely to get through all the questions, but it would be great to get through as many as we can and give the patrons an opportunity to share their thoughts with us. So that's the plan for the session. In the next bit, I'm going to ask you all, if you wouldn't mind, just to switch off your cameras so we can just focus in on the patrons a little bit, just so that I can give it a little bit more of a panel feel. I think that's be something be good for us to do, if you wouldn't mind. And then I'm going to ask them all to say a few words, just to get us started. So yeah, if you could just all switch off your cameras, that would be wonderful. I think we're okay. Great, right. Let's crack on, shall we? So just to start, I think if all of our patrons could just say who they are. I think most folk know who you all are. And then either say in a word what Agile means to them, or a short, succinct statement on what reaching this 20th anniversary mark means to them. And perhaps, if they don't mind, perhaps share a fun fact about themselves. I think that would be nice. So Alistair isn't able to join us for the first half. So I'm going to, and neither is April actually. So I'm going to start with Ari. I believe has managed to join us. Ari had a few technical problems. Ari, are you on? Is Ari on? Ari, I think you're on mute. You're on mute.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Yeah,
Welcome.
I'm here now.
You just want to yeah, I can hear you. Do you just want to just quickly introduce yourself and perhaps say in a word what Agile means to you, or perhaps might be pertinent for you, what reaching this 20th anniversary mark means?
Yeah, so my name is Arie van Bennekum. As one of the authors of the Agile Manifesto, in it for a long time. Started working in a different way in 1994 for delivering better value earlier to the client. I wanted to avoid delay. That was my thing in Agile, avoiding delay. So the right stuff and as fast as you can with a good quality, so you don't have all the bugs and the misunderstandings and the fixes. 20 years shows us we still have a long way to go, but it's so young, right? So we have a long way to go. Fantastic. Next.
Thank you for that opening. We'll move to Azhar. Azhar, welcome. Would you like to quickly introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. My name is Azhar Turasbayev. I'm from Russia. I'm pretty much a usual, I believe, Agile coach. I work for a company called Scrum Tech, which I founded, that does a pretty much standard job of Agile transformation for companies in Russia mostly. So this is what I do. Agile for me is different every time I work with different companies. So for example, today, Agile for me is empowering teams because of this, have this kind of problem with one of my customers. So helping teams to achieve more with safety, feedback, and trust. This is what is Agile for me right now. I think that's it.
Fantastic, thank you. Hi, Ellen. Would you like to go next, please?
There we go. Hi, I'm Ellen Grove, and I am the Managing Director of the Agile Alliance. What Agile means to me is it's really about building community. This is what's at the heart of it for me personally. It's about how do we take a people-centered approach to solving complex problems? How do we focus on the people we're solving the problems for, but also how do we focus on the relationships and the connections between the people who are working together to build whatever it is we're building? And, you know, what's really exciting to me about the 20th anniversary is look at the way that the Agile community has grown over the past 20 years. Look at how many people from how many different parts of the world we have here today who are interested in learning together and sharing their experiences and figure out where we're going next. And I think that's really exciting.
Fantastic. Love that. Thank you for that. Esther, would you like to follow on from there? I can't see Esther on my screen. Is Esther there?
Esther's on mute.
Esther, you're on mute.
Oh, Esther, you're on mute.
I was on mute and my cursor was lost somewhere, but it has been found. So I'm Esther Derby, and I wrote a little book on retrospectives. So that found its way into the community. What Agile means to me is making software more humane while at the same time adding more value. And I think the humanity part or the humaneness part is the thing that matters most to me. Two things about this being the 20th anniversary is that there are potentially people who have a significant career in software who now have only known this way of working. That when they started, they were exposed to Agile, and that's been what they've done their entire career. And it continues to surprise me that people take a very non-Agile approach to becoming Agile. I would like people to change to Agile in an Agile manner. And the fun fact is that I have a loaf of sourdough that's ready to come out of the oven. So I'm going to go get it now, and then I'll be back.
Fantastic. Love it.
Perfect
Love it.
timing.
Perfect timing, yep. Gabrielle, you're next. Welcome.
Hey there. So I thought it was really interesting, the timing that we're talking about, what the last 20 years have been about, considering what's going on. Because the people I've seen surviving this and doing really well are super agile. They're very adaptive. And I keep thinking we've all trained for this. And one of my favorite inspirations during this time has been Ricardo, who's actually on the call he's got an agile restaurant in London. I mean, these guys were told, close your doors. He had 5 hours to pivot to a completely new business model. While people are in the restaurant, he repurposes it on the fly. And we've been speaking the whole time. I've pivoted my business model multiple times during the pandemic. So all of us, I think I love Ricardo's spirit. It's all a great opportunity. And it is. We're so lucky. We've got even more reasons to do better. So that idea of what we can do that we've trained for, being super adaptive and helping people solve problems, for me, that's really important at the moment. Fun fact, I got 4 citizenships and I move around the world a lot. I think people now think that I'm on the lam, that I'm a secret agent or I'm a crime lord.
Are you secret agent?
What do you think? Maybe.
Wouldn't be a secret, I don't.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. Thank you, Gabrielle. Johanna.
Okay, so agility, not agile, because agile is an adjective and agility is what we want. Agility to me means really optimizing for adaptability and resilience. And what I see now in our 20 years of reflection and going forward is a way to, as Esther said, to focus on creating humane workspaces. We have this opportunity now to move just from the team perspective, which is what the original Agile Manifesto talked about, to really embracing agility in our organizations and the mechanistic way of looking at the entire organization. Yeah, that doesn't do it. And I am too serious to have any fun facts at all.
I don't believe that for a second. Lisa. Welcome.
I love that, Johanna. So I'm Lisa Atkins. Hello, everyone. Coming to you from Richmond, Virginia. And I'm an Agile and leadership coach. And I think about Agile and I think about our ability to stay sane during really complex and ever-changing times. That what we know how to do as a community, because we've been practicing in our organizations, is how to metabolize change that is constantly coming at us and continue to make forward progress even so, and maybe especially so. So I love that about Agile. And here at the 20th mark, I just really want us to allow ourselves, myself included, to feel the joy of celebration. Although there is a lot more to do, boy, we have come a long way. And so I'm bringing in that wild abandon of celebration and not letting us off the hook of that until we've celebrated enough. And then we can go right back to continuous improvement and being hard on ourselves and all that sort of thing.
No, fantastic. And I never forgot the interview I did with you as part of our Meet the Patron series, and you talked about we're kind of often less capable of giving ourselves that kind of space and capacity to express joy. That really resonated with me, and I think we're keen for everybody to celebrate and express joy over the month as we learn collectively, both celebrate the past, kind of enjoy the current, marvel at what's going on now, and then also kind of contemplate and explore the future. So no, thank you for that. Peter, I'm going to have to give you a shout out because it is very early where you are. So
Yeah.
you have my respect, sir. So.
Well, I hope what I'm about to say makes sense at 4 a.m. in the morning. It probably won't. For those who don't know me, I'm Peter Merrell. I've been involved with Agile since before it was called Agile. I spoke at XP2K about 6 months before the manifesto came out, and I invented the first Agile game. And these days, I'm founder of the X-Scale Alliance and author of the Agile DAO and a whole bunch of other silly things. I see Agile as a massive challenge that in some ways we are failing to grasp. We've had 20 years of a revolution, and we have a 5% score on adaptability, according to the most recent State of Agile survey. If you look at that number, the last couple of surveys said it was about responding to changing market conditions. 5% before that, it was 6% there. Anyway, business agility, to my mind, is the challenge ahead. I don't want to rattle on for too long, but we are fighting against a problem called bureaucracy. And there are ways to attack that problem that we haven't even begun to grasp properly. And a lot of the stuff we've been doing has only been feeding that problem. So I'd love to talk about that more. I've got a session on descaling in a couple of hours on the descaling manifesto, which is specifically about that. I'll shut up.
Fantastic. Thank you, Peter. Roman, welcome.
Hello.
Were you searching for your unmute mute as well, were you?
Sorry, say that again, Taff?
No, I was saying it looked like you were also searching for your mute unmute.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm Roman, and I work on the intersection of Agile and product management. And so when I reflect on the last 20 years, what comes to mind is how much Agile has helped to change and enrich product management as a discipline, compared to where product management was about 20 years ago. Things like early user feedback and the ability to validate products early and frequently, or reduce time to market, better product quality, improved adaptability, better alignment, better collaboration. I mean, those are things that we all take for granted today, or I think many people within the product management community take for granted today. But as we know it today, those things, those benefits didn't exist 20 years ago. So I think Agile has had a tremendous positive impact on product management. Just like many of my co-patrons have said, there are a number of challenges that still persist, but things like empowerment, for instance, product owner was called product owner to emphasize the fact that the person should own the product on behalf of the company, needs the right level of empowerment and respect. And many product people, no matter if they're called product owners or not, are not sufficiently empowered, just to mention one of the challenges that still persist. But as Lisa said, I think it's kind of nice to look back and look at all the achievements and the positive things without ignoring or suppressing the challenges that still lie ahead.
Wonderfully put. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think that gives us quite a lot to reflect on, and I'm sure there'll be many questions coming through in the second half where I think our attendees will be quite keen to explore some more of these topics. Sally. Can't see Sally. Oh, there's Sally.
I am right here. Hey, everyone. Hello, and let's celebrate together, like my friend Lisa said. So first of all, I am the founder of Agility Health, and what I've been focusing on is how do we leverage measurement and continuous improvement as a way of accelerating the journey? I think a lot of companies are behind. I think they've been taking their sweet time and now they have to accelerate. They got to do this at scale. They got to do it faster, but they have to do it in a real way, regardless of the flavor of Agile that you're falling in love with or the methodology. I'm passionate about them measuring where they are today and actually investing and listening to the voice of the people and helping their teams grow. What I feel about today is really the celebration. I mean, I think we've been through so much with 2020 and COVID, and pausing to actually reflect and see where we've come, how we've matured, how Agile has impacted leadership styles, cultures. I've brought Agile to Sudan, my home country. And in Sudan, no one knows that Agile was built for software or for IT. They've learned it from the start that it's just a way for teams to work and deliver work. So that whole point of this is not for software, this can apply outside, we don't even have that conversation because it was never introduced that way because that country was just so behind. And so that concept of agility and Agile and government agility and national agility, not just business agility, excites me. So I'm very honored to be here with all of you. And then my last interesting thing is my leadership motto is be bold, be real, and lead with love. And I have this vision of bringing love back to the workplace where we can just talk about it and feel it and communicate with it. So honored to be with all of you here.
That's lovely. No, I appreciate that. And thank you for being here. And last but not least, Mr. Simon Wardley. Hi, Simon.
Hello. Can I just go ditto? Because that was a brilliant introduction by Sally. I thought that was fantastic. And I think there's a real big difference between Agile and agility. So I'm a mapper. What I love are maps. And to give you my background on Agile, I started with Agile back in 2000, so 21 years ago. Extreme programming, sorry, I should say. It's a big call out to Kent Beck. That was fantastic. What does Agile mean to me? It's a context-specific method which has evolved, and unfortunately, I think it's losing sight of its context. So I'm going to often take the position of to go to the future, we have to go back to the past, and I'm sure we can get into that. So fun fact, I started my career off chauffeur punting on the River Cam, set up a group doing this back in the 1990s. And chauffeur punting, if you don't know, is the process by which you steer a boat, which steers like a brick through a river, which is totally chaotic with people, lots of people on boats, not knowing how to control them, smashing them into you left, right, and centre, and you have to get yourself through this to a destination at the end, which is pretty much what I do with corporations these days because it's almost identical. So thank you.
Fantastic. Brilliant. That was great fun. No, thank you for doing that. That was lovely and good to hear from you, and I'm sure attendees enjoyed that. So we're gonna start with some questions, and from what I understand from my wonderful co-hosts, the Miro board, however you choose to say it, has been very busy. So I think we've got quite a lot of things coming through. Sabrina, Shelby. Yeah.
Yeah.
What we could do is why don't we start with some questions and then we can take a break? I'm just conscious it's quite a long session. And then we'll see. Do you want to start us off, one of you, with a question for one of our patrons? Why don't we just get stuck into it?
Yeah, so we've got one here. So I'll do one and Shelby can do one. So we've got one
Sounds
here.
great.
If you had one wish for Agile in 2022, what would it be? And that's for Alistair.
Alistair isn't joining us till.
Yeah, he's not here.
Yeah. So Alistair's not here yet. No.
Second one. We are new to SAFe. What's some advice that you'd give to the organisation? I'm in it, wrong one. That's for Alistair. Sorry, user error.
I want to see the answer to that one.
Sabrina, they're not for Alistair. I think that a lot of people don't realize we have names across the top. I think that those are general questions for all of us.
Well, I will say it and we can answer it. So we are new to SAFe. What's some advice that you give to an organisation starting to implement this?
I'll have a go.
Go for it.
All right. So there's nothing wrong with safe. It's not a complete way of going at producing an agile organization, but there's a lot wrong with the way that it's sold. Don't let people run a push transformation in your organization. You want to do a pull transformation. You want a proof of concept that's small and works end to end, business, design, delivery, DevOps, and then grow it. If you try to push it into your organization, you'll wind up with a massive compromise. It doesn't matter whether it's safe or Scrum or DevOps or you name it, pushes your enemy when it comes to starting this stuff.
Thank you. That's a really good description. So we've got one here for Roman. So what is the industry / area that needs Agile most nowadays?
All of them.
We had this conversation once before, didn't we? Any particular ones? Any that come to mind?
You know, I think one of the great things about Agile practices is that that they're so widespread these days. But, you know, at the same time, and I think, again, that was mentioned as part of the introduction, I think we all know that not all organizations are able to apply Agile practices effectively. So organizations that would benefit maybe from even more agility or an even more effective way of applying Agile practices, government organizations, I would say, and also large organizations like banks and insurance companies. You know, I've worked with some of the high street banks here in the UK, and their processes still tend to be, well, rather long-winded, you know, so. But I'm sure that, you know, there are other industries that will benefit from more agile or better agile practices, more agility too. So,
thank you, Roman. We've got one here for Simon. So, if you could leave only one thing from Agile, what would it be?
If you could leave one thing, the desire for Agile fits everything is the one thing that I would leave. If I look at some of the methods like extreme programming, they are ideally suited for environments where change is the norm, and whereas other methods and other techniques are actually suited for environments where change is not a desirable thing, where what you want to do is reduce deviation. And in past history, what we tend to do is take any method which is suited to a specific context and try to make it into the one-size-fits-all method, rather than realizing that whenever you deal with any complicated and complex system, that you need to apply multiple approaches depending upon how evolved the components are. Sorry, that's a CO2 monitor kicking off. Apologies for that. I monitor air and other bits and pieces of my office. So that's the one thing I would leave, the desire to try to make it one size fits all, and really to focus in on the context where it is most suited.
Love it. Thank you very much. I'm going to pass over to my other assistant, Shelby.
Hello, everyone. This is a question for Joanna. Joanna, there's been a question put on the board that says, what would you do differently today if you could?
Yeah,
you're on mute, Joanna.
Yeah. I was muted. I'm now fine. Yeah. You might or might not know I've written several books about management, and if I could have done something different 20 years ago, that would have been a focus on management collaboration instead of working at the team level. Working at the team level is necessary. However, I have seen that the team goals don't actually get to a common person until they get to the very top of the organization. And that changes what teams can and cannot do, right? Well-meaning people can try, but they cannot succeed. So if I had known then what I know now, I would have started to focus on managers a lot earlier. Of course, Esther and I wrote that nice little book, Behind Closed Doors, Secrets of Great Management, which many of you have found useful because you've told us. However, that was not quite enough.
Wow, what a great response. Thank you very much, Joanna. There's one here for Peter.
Mm-hmm.
What the heck is the Agile TAO?
DAO. Okay, well, in a nutshell, Agile is not 20 years old. It's over 2,000 years old. It began with a bloke named Lao Tzu, except Lao Tzu never existed. That's how agile he was. And there's a whole bunch of really useful mindset advice in Lao Tzu that I've spent 30 odd years trying to put into an agile frame. So it's a beta book that's really about agile mindset. And so that's probably the right answer.
Very, very much. Sally, question here for you. We have a few teams who have adopted agility, but most leaders are resisting to release people into Scrum teams. Any ideas on how we can scale up, please?
You know, I think the time for Agile being a bottom-up movement is gone, and I think it needs to be both. It needs to be bottom-up and top-down, and I think that the transformation, the strategy, the leadership by example needs to come from the executive team. So we've been focused on, because honestly, a manager is not going to change what they do or release their people to the teams if nobody above them tells them that that is the new way of working. And I know maybe that doesn't sound agile because it's going to, well, you can't force people. All I'm saying is if you want to transform your organization, the people above need to explain the why, they need to explain the strategy, and they need to show the path forward and at least encourage everybody and create reward systems for it. But if you don't change how I'm being reported, if you don't change my context and you just tell me I got to go do this and I'm losing control. And remember, like what Joanna just said, and we have not focused on the role of the manager, you guys. I mean, we have to be really open and honest about that. We have trained the teams and we went up to the executives and we've done some XP and DevOps and technical. Managers, we have completely pulled the rug from underneath them. We've changed their role dramatically, and we have not given them that benefit of the doubt of transitioning them and showing them the new path, and we've been very judgmental towards them. So I think that there's a bigger problem here to solve, and it's not just the having them change their behavior. I think there's an organizational system problem that needs to be addressed.
Wow. Totally agree on that one. That's an amazing response. Thank you very much. Gabrielle, this one is for your good self. Is there something you don't like about Agile is the question?
That's a good question. One thing that always puzzles me is the idea that Agile is about evolving and adapting, and yet I see many Agile approaches, frameworks being really rigid. And once they get set up, it's like we're not allowed to question them, not meant to evolve them. And I just find those two things completely hypocritical. It just creates a massive conflict. So that's one thing that I'd like to see us get better at is, I look at why, and I suspect it's because where there's money on the table, it gets a nice label. We don't want to change that because it might challenge what we're doing. But if we can't challenge ourselves, then we shouldn't be in this game. It's like one of my favorite sayings at a company was, one of the guys, Chad, said, if you're not constantly in danger of getting fired, you're just not trying hard enough. And so for all of us, we have to be willing to even say our models themselves need to keep adapting. If not, we're going to stagnate and be like every other, framework on the market on the rubbish tip. So that's what I don't like about Agile.
Agreed. and lots of people in the comments are also agreeing with you. Thank you very much. Askat, there's a question here for you as well. It says, is there anything to take into account when developing Agile mindsets in the Russian culture?
Wow, that's really deep questions. I spent a lot of time exploring these issues. Yes, probably one of the most important problem is direct culture, which is on one hand is good, on the other hand is quite the challenge thing. And direct culture means that you give immediate direct feedback when talking to people. And I've been to situations when people are trying to, working with other countries, they're not trying to talk to manager, giving feedback. In Russia, our people just tell the thing they think the same moment they come across the problem. And it means that, of course, provide a lot of tension inside of teams. People start struggling like quite fast, I would say. But basically, if you kind of manage to get through all these problems, teams get closer to each other. They know how to solve their problems better, quicker, and basically, from engineering point of view, it's sometimes better. So it's the problem number one. So there are many more, but basically, just to be short, this is number one.
Completely agree. Thank you very, very much. I'm going to go straight to Ellen for this one first before I pop into Esther. But Ellen, there's a question here, more of a statement, Ellen. So I don't know how you're going to answer this one, but it says, you are truly an inspirational woman. What is your secret to all of your life achievements?
A lot of serendipity, I would say, a lot of chance, because I'll say this is not the career I ever envisioned myself in when I set out. But I think it's how I've come to end up here is by always being curious, by always wondering about, hey, that's something new. I want to learn about that. Let me go and figure out something about that because that's an interesting problem that I'd like to learn more about. And the really important thing is not being afraid to try stuff in order to learn new things. I think a lot of people feel held back from trying new roles, from working in new ways, because they think, I have to be an expert. I have to learn everything I need to know before I can go off and work that way or try solving that problem or do that thing. And we lose a lot of great ideas. We lose a lot of enthusiasm. We lose a lot of skill and knowledge because people hold themselves back. And honestly, that has been the secret to my career journey so far, being curious, being brave, and not being afraid to try things too much. And I think some of those things are really at the heart of working in an agile way too. It's about asking lots of questions and thinking, well, what would happen if we do this? Let's go find out.
Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome. Truly blown away by that response. Thank you very much. Esther, to kind of state again some statements here. I don't know how you'd like to answer them, but the one question is, if you were not to be an Agilist, what else would you have become in life?
I don't know. I mean, I think the reason I became interested in Agile was because of the emphasis on collaborative teams, sustainable pace, just making work more humane. And that's what really matters to me. Because I think many corporations working there is a soul-sucking experience. And if you look in the family tree of management, the origins are about extracting maximum labor. And I think that, that is still with us. So I think we, that's what appealed to me, was the explicit valuing of humanity and humaneness. So I think I probably would have ended up doing some form of consulting around that, whether it was in the Agile space or some other space.
Wow. Wow. Well, I, for one, am certainly glad that you are still an Agilist. Thank you very much, Esther. Roman, there's a question here for you that says, have you ever given up on the company during an Agile transformation?
Have I ever given up on a company during an Agile transformation? So it's been a while, to be honest, since I last was involved in a proper Agile transformation. These days, I tend to focus more on product ownership and product management, and leave the big picture up to other people who are more knowledgeable and competent than me. But I've certainly seen companies abandon an Agile transformation, and there's one company I worked with about 2006, and even though they did have some local success with Agile practices, ultimately I don't think it was very successful for them. And then I had a follow-up conversation with them a few years ago, and and they were on their second journey to Agile, on their second Agile transformation, saying, this time we want to get this right. So, even if you find your company isn't successful the first time round, maybe, there's an opportunity to try again in the future. But I think, as some of the other patrons and panelists have said, I think it's important to get the focus right. And I think Joanna talked about a mechanistic approach earlier. And I think reflecting on the values and the principles in the Agile Manifesto, can be really beneficial, rather than saying we want to implement SAFe, or we want to implement less, or we want to implement framework XYZ or model ABC. So, yeah.
No, thanks for that, Roman. That is awesome. Thank you very much. I'm just going to quickly jump into the chat and come off of my board. Some people can't use it, but there's a couple of questions there. Maybe we just open it up to all of our great patrons that we have on the call. So there's two questions. One says, how do you think Agile prepared us for the current context and the widespread culture of remote working that we currently find ourselves in?
I'll give that one a go.
Thanks, Peter.
Agile is not about quicker, better, faster, twice the work in half the time. Agile is about the flow of learning, not the flow of work. If we can accelerate the flow of learning through organizations, then even in a VUCA world like today, we have some hope of doing good.
Anybody else like to take an answer to that one?
I would.
Hi, Joanna.
I feel very strongly about reasonable remote work. And what I am seeing now is a combination of very reasonable remote work and totally unreasonable remote work. I still know about way too many people who are supposed to have the 3 a.m. meeting with people farther over there, and the 6 a.m. meeting with people who are closer, and the 7 p.m. and the 10 p.m. meetings with people farther west. This is unsustainable. It's, if I may say, stupid, right? That breaks all of the flow of learning, and it makes remote work look impossible, because it's not remote work. It's putting together teams who are not really teams. So I see way too much of this and way too little of thinking about what really makes a team. How do we flow work through a team and get valuable outcomes on the outside? And I will stop now. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. That was great insight. All of you patrons, I really could have you speak all night. There is another quick question on the inside chat. I think that we'll take that one before I hand back to our lovely host, Sat, before we go for a quick break. But it's the last question, and again, I'm going to open it up to all of the patrons. It says, I long felt Principle 6 about face-to-face communication has been misused in many organisations which have rules about co-location, halting the flexibility and distributed teaming that is enjoyed by many progressive teams. Do you think some of the principles are outdated, and should there be an effort by everyone to amend it? And that's open to all of you.
Can I ask a question? Are we having a face-to-face conversation now?
I think we are.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Simon, definitely.
I'm just going to jump in real quickly. I honestly, when I teach any Agile, because I'm having to teach it to people that don't know anything about software, I automatically have to change. It's, not software delivery. We talk about value delivery, people in collaboration. So we've had to modify it. And when we talk about, the principles of developers, we use the word developers a lot. We now just talk about team members. So I do think that, we've all had to evolve as we, talk about Agile, especially when you're talking to business people or non-technology people. And, whether it's time to evolve the manifesto itself or just Agile really has evolved. I think, we really have grown up, and it's gone to a different level of enterprise agility, business agility. I think there's government agility. There's so much more happening. So I don't know. I think it's a good question to ask, is it time to update the manifesto itself to version 2.0? I think there's an effort going on related to that. So I'm curious what my other patrons here think.
Well, maybe I can jump in here. from my
Go ahead, Ari.
from my side, because I get the question so often. You know, if you would write the manifesto again, what would you change? Right, that question. And I wouldn't change a lot, because in my opinion, it's sort of a declaration of independence. You know, it's an inspiration, and it's still, you know, it serves, in my opinion, what we were looking for, and still a lot of organizations are looking for. So as I said in the beginning, there's a long way to go. However, what I blame myself for in the time, you have to imagine that we went to Snowbird. I came in from the Netherlands. I had a 23-hour flight, 2.5 days work, got ripped out of the room, you know, had to go back to the airport. So I became a little bit easy on a couple of things. And there's one thing that if we would write it now, would not take for granted as I took it at the time. And that's that bloody word software. Because software on its own doesn't do anything. It's a combination of a software product or a solution, the people using it, and the way you want to use it together, you know, that brings the value. And I would rephrase software as it's written in the manifesto itself. I would rephrase it like product or service or that kind of thing. And then it's still extremely valid. And also, we wouldn't have that continuous debate about, is Agile outside the world of IT always also possible? I've never done it exclusively in the world of IT. And this is starting in 1994. So I think from that perspective, I think on one hand, it's very vivid, it's very alive and very applicable. And at the same time, that one word software, it messes our brains up all the time.
As someone who has written a manifesto that builds on the Agile manifesto and explicitly inherits it, extends it, but doesn't attempt to change one word of it, I completely get where you're coming from, Ari. But I think that the question is really timely in that we are trying to apply Agile outside of that software context to combat things that were never contemplated in the original conversation. So I love the idea that manifesto is closed for modification, but open for extension.
There are so many other manifestos already, right, that you can see around. And coming back to the word software, again, for me, outside the world of IT is a no-brainer. Because if I do a value delivery, it means that I have to go to full delivery. That's the only way. And in the second half of the 90s, when I did my commercial projects, I always had multiple teams working in parallel, and there would be 1 or 2 software development teams, but the other ones would do completely different things, but in an Agile way. So it's more about the willing, you know what people do, because people don't like changes. So when you're talking about something, the first thing they do is, you know, they take a gun and they start shooting at you and saying it's impossible and it doesn't work like this, to the level that you even, you know, get called a liar or a cheat or whatever. If you change that into, okay, I have someone here who has a best practice, obviously did it successfully. Let's try and do this as well, and not have the continuous debate up front. And I think that's there. And then you have this manifesto. I think it's still valid. And I think we see, at least I see manifestos around Agile testing and about Agile analysis and I see them all evolving and I read them. But if this is what you mean, right, we have the original and from there we build on, great. Yes. But let's look at in a collaborative setting, because what I feel very often is that we have those new sort of manifestos put in a silo, and we try to break silos when we work Agile, and then we bring them into a silo. So there's so many things to say around it, right? But I always say, if you want to change the manifesto, make sure that you get all the benefits, and then you feel free to change, right? So there's a long way to go.
Absolutely.
Awesome insight from you all.
Oh yeah. Sorry, Shelby. I thought
no,
that was
okay.
No, I was just going to say I thought that was a tremendous point at which to probably stop and take a break and reflect on what Ari's just said. I thought it was excellent, and it was wonderful to see you all kind of collaborating and almost kind of debating amongst yourselves, and for us all to witness that, I think was a privilege. and I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure our attendees did as well. I don't know how I would summarize it before we take a quick break. I was desperately trying to listen and communicate with others who are reaching out to me and write some notes. And I guess the short one for me would be that I would probably say it's clear we still have work to do. And I think most of you would agree with that. I think it's come up in many of the conversations. There's still a lot to do in terms of management and collaboration. And I think we are constantly finding better ways to do things. And I think when Esther and I spoke, I think that came up in that conversation. And Esther's Patron interview, I think ultimately is about learning, continuing to learn in the flow of learning, which I think is something Peter commented on. Agile's history goes much further back than the original authoring of the manifesto. So there's some other sort of great history there to kind of leverage. And yeah, I think a lot of the sessions that make up the program are very much looking at Agile way beyond tech. And I think many of us have been talking about that over the last few years, and you've touched on it in this session, which is brilliant, because I think it gives us plenty to talk about in the second half, because I think going beyond technology and looking at it in a broader perspective is where we will be able to see greater gains, and also where we'll learn new things about the ways we can apply Agile. And I think that's what I took away from everything you all said. I probably missed a few things, but those were my takeaways. What we're going to do now is we're going to take a quick break, give everybody the chance to catch their breath and take a comfort break, etc. And we'll reconvene in maybe about 7 minutes or so. I think we've got plenty of time. So yeah, if you're all happy to do that, yeah, feel free to stretch your legs and grab a coffee and etc. And we'll see you back at about 8 minutes past. Fantastic. Thank you all. Great session. Love the engagement in the chat. Really good to see.
Here's Celebrate by The Levelers on Amazon Music.
Alexa, play Celebrate by Kool and the Gang.
Celebration, single version by Kool and the Gang from Scott's Spotify.
Right, everyone feel better for that?
That was tremendous. I just returned and saw all this activity and I thought, wow, I'm definitely at the right party. That was brilliant.
I'm cup of tea now. Thanks, Scott.
Right. Oh wow. Okay, we still got a lot of folk on. Okay, great. Give it another minute, and then we'll resume. And I see April. Hi, April. Welcome.
Hello.
Good to see you. Right, and I'm looking for Alistair. There's Alistair. I see Alistair. Hello, sir. Good to see you.
Good
Right.
night. I'm here.
Did you get to dance, Alistair?
I was dancing in my chair.
Okay, cool.
My sister's trying to get in, so we're going to see if we can find a link. I think
I just pinged a link into Facebook for you, Alistair.
Yeah, I think that's the same one I just gave her, and she said I clicked on it. Wants my email address and password. Does she have to have a Zoom link?
Yeah,
Anyway,
I think
she will or she won't.
Yeah, I think you have to register. It's we got Zoom bombed. It was quite horrible. There was racial slurs and everything, and I think we're a bit of a target. So
yeah, we've been Zoom bombed, and if they're good, and you're not prepared, they just take over everything, and you just go, everybody.
I'm practiced now. I'm a ninja at kicking people out.
Yeah, good deal.
It's exactly what we need. No,
Is that your superpower?
Yeah,
we none of that going on. No, I didn't even know all that. I didn't even know any of that was going on. So you obviously dealt with that, Scott. I was completely oblivious.
So it wasn't tonight. It was a previous one. Yeah, but yeah.
Oh right, okay. Oh wow, okay, that's a shame. Right, I think we'll resume, folks. Thanks for returning. I hope you're refreshed. You got your coffee and a comfort break and a moment to stretch your legs. We definitely got that with the dancing, so that's great. We're joined by Dr. Alistair Coburn and April Jefferson. So welcome to you both. Delighted you could join us. In the first half, we did a little very quick sort of intro, but just like your name and maybe what Agile in a word means to you, and maybe probably pertinent for yourself, Alistair. Having reached this 20-year mark, what does that kind of mean to you? I think as an original manifesto author, you might have a few words for us there and reflections. So can I start with you just very quickly, and then we're going to go back to the Q&A. We've got a board of questions, and I'm sure there are many for you. Do you want to start with that?
Yeah,
okay?
I just first of all, I want to thank Seth for pronouncing my name right. For those of you who are,
I know how to say it.
So you're Scottish, right? So I have high expectations for you, but not everybody knows it's pronounced Coburn with a silent CK. That's a Scottish name, and we've got Scott here and Seth and others to get it right. And we actually have Craig Coburn on here also. So we have a passel of Coburns. And if my sister would get on, we'd have a Vivian Coburn, and then we would have I see Esther. Hi, Esther. Good to see you. I see all kind of people. Names Lisa, Joanna, all kind of good people. It's a trip, man. I'll tell you that this is 20 years on. It's just a trip. Like I can't even fathom it. Basically, and it's when I show up places, people are generally surprised to find out that I'm alive. Like I'll go, here's one of the authors of the manifesto, and it's like in the history books, So anybody who graduated from college after, let's say after 2001, it was in the history books, right? So basically anybody who came out of college in the last 20 years, and everybody knows that everybody in the history books are dead. I mean, that's the point of being in history books, is you're dead, And so I go leaping up to the front of the room, and I'm obviously not dead, and they're shocked. So that's the first cognitive dissonance they get with the whole thing, and that's kind of weird. So yeah, 20. And we're gonna I actually was organizing a ski outing at Snowbird for next Saturday, but I got one-upped by the Scrum Alliance. They went and organized a big fat session, and I said, you better have afternoon skiing set up because you know, if you don't have afternoon skiing set up, you're not in the spirit of the manifesto writing, because we had afternoon skiing set up. And if you're so businessy you can't go skiing, then you're not in connection with the manifesto. That's what I have to say. So anyway, I'll be going skiing next Saturday.
Love it. Love it. No, fantastic. Rightly so. Rightly so. Thank you for that. April, would you like to just say a few words?
Well, so what do you want to know?
Well, you either give us Agile in a word, or you might want to share a short reflection on what does reaching this 20th anniversary mark mean to you personally? What does it mean to reach this moment?
What stuck out for me the most is Agile in a word is mobility. And that that invokes freedom and power and in so many ways. Is that I think most of us here understand that Agile is a mindset, and within our mind that that is something that we can control. We control our actions and we control what we think, and therefore we have mobility of the mind, and that opens up for possibilities, that creates space for experimentation, discovery, connection, so many wonderful things. And that for me, that reflection is that I believe Agile has helped us uncover something more than just our look into software, but our look at humanity. So
fabulous. No, thank you for that. And having joined one of your open space sessions, I definitely felt some of that, you know, that sense of community, that inclusivity, and that kind of sense of collective humanity. It was really quite wonderful. So no, thank you, and thank to all of our patrons for their contributions over the last 20 years and helping us all get to where we are today. And as part of this festival, we're hoping that everybody who's involved, all the festival goers, will use this opportunity to pause and reflect and rejoice, celebrate, and also contemplate what might come next, and explore that with us, and be open-minded to the possibilities. That's something that Scott and I and everybody, all the amazing volunteers who've come together across the globe to co-create this. I think that's something we're hoping will come out, but also we're not going to dictate. It's about emergence. Ellen and I were chatting, and Ellen asked me, she said, what happens after? I said, don't really know. We'll have to see. It is all about emergence. Let's see what emerges, and hopefully we can do that. We can do that all together. So we had an amazing session just before the break. The questions were coming thick and fast, and Shelby and Sabrina were doing a tremendous job of getting the questions to our patrons. So we're gonna continue. We're gonna go back to that and continue that for the next 40 minutes or so, and then that'll give me 5 minutes at the end just to bring the session to a close. So hopefully you've got plenty more questions, and we're now also being joined by Alistair and April, so I'm sure there are questions for them. So I'm going to hand back over to Shelby and Sabrina and see if they've got some more questions for our wonderful patrons.
We've got loads of amazing questions, and just to let you guys know, those who can't actually get into Miro, if you directly message Shelby while I'm talking, she's going to chuck them into Miro, but make sure you put the person's name you'd like to ask a question to, or other, which will be for all patrons. So I've got one for Alistair. Now that you're here, hello. Right.
Hi, what a surprise. What a surprise. You actually have a question for me, huh?
We've got a couple, actually. We've been holding them off for you. So the first one is, what a process before you created Crystal and implemented Agile. What was the change?
I have no idea what that question means. Can you see if you can unpack that?
I can have a look. So in here, it's got about community role situation in early 90s. That's all it says. Have you got the person who wrote it? If you can come off mute, you might be able to ask put a bit more information
Yeah, I
in.
did. If that's what it says, I can relate to those words. You added stuff about process, and I have no idea what. So just read the question one more time. Read the words one more time, exactly as it's there.
What a process was before you created Crystal and implemented Agile. What was changed about the community, rules, and the situation in the early 90s?
I said after 5 minutes.
Not that bit.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, right. So I can unpack that because they were wondering then what were the processes we were following before we came up with Agile, presumably as a process, right? And actually we were fighting against process. So there wasn't a process. There was nil. There was nothing, right? So I started in 91. I was hired by IBM to create a process and methodology, a documented one for the IBM consulting group and IBM services to use for Smalltalk and C++ projects. In 91, they had a methodology for non-object oriented languages, you know, with the databases and and whatever the standard kit was at the time. And it was already at that time very mature and very subtle. It was a plug-in, start where you are, a small improvements thing. But they had a gap right around the Smalltalk and C++. And I didn't know anything about methodologies. So my boss said, well, why don't you go and just debrief some teams and find out what works? We don't have any vested interest, whatever's good, you know, we'll just use it. And so I started doing years of flying around the world, interviewing and debriefing project teams around the world. And the stunning thing was there was no process, right? There was nothing you could write down. And using the books available at the time, it was a big mystery because there was like, if I would say, what did you do this? No. Did you use case tools? No. Did you do this? No. Did you have, you know, whatever? No. And the punchline was what I ended up writing is crystal clear, which is you take sort of 3 to 9 people, you put them in a room and you give them access to the customers and you deliver software. In those days, 2 months was a short cycle, but you know, you show that you get question and answer with the users. You show the customers what you're doing, you know, and you periodically pause and regroup. And that's what they were doing. And there was no way to describe it because there's no process there. So there was no process. These people were just doing things that wasn't written down in any book. And so that was what I was wrestling with, was how do you write something that basically has no description other than put a couple of people in a room and let them talk to each other and talk to the customers. So Crystal Clear, which I wrote in 98, was literally just me documenting what they said worked. And I've checked it multiple times since then. I go to a small successful project team and I say, what's like really important to you? They said, give us 3 to 6 people, put us in a room, keep distractions away, give us access to the customer, let us deliver, you know, periodically, and we'll take care of everything else. And that's it. And so that was it was mysterious how to describe that in any way that could be replicable, but it turns out exactly that description is all you need. So that's the question. What was the process before there was an Agile process? There was a void, is what there was.
Thank you, Alistair. The next one we got is for April. So I've actually got 2 questions for you, April. So I'm going to start off with the first one here. They're quite interesting ones as well. What is the most difficult in the path of becoming an Agilist? And in the second one, you might be able to link up with this, is 3 tips on how a true Agilist survives in lockdown. Go for it.
So I think practice is how you become an Agilist. That it's more of a mental practice with intention. That was definitely my journey, focusing on something. We have that wonderful manifesto that we all talk about so often, whether I think wherever you begin, if you focus on a particular area, it all kind of circles back to everything else. So that's how you become, is a practice, focus, and make it and figure out how can I continue to explore it. What else? And that's the part of the journey that it's not over, because there's a constant exploration of those things. So pick one, start someplace, and that's your journey.
What would your 3 tips be to survive lockdown?
Is take time for breath. Is that it's easy to get bogged down in the online world, but move away from it all. Dance, which I came in and we were dancing, I just joined in. Figure out what your dance is. Maybe your dance is a walk. So I implore people to take breath, invite stillness in, dance, journal, do something offline, and understand who you are. So it's a great time to get in touch with yourself.
That's a really good advice. Out of interest, I know this question was just for April. Does any of the other patrons, do you have any advice on how to survive lockdown being an Agilist? A difficult one.
Question is it specifically for an Agilist? I think it's more an Agile people that are caught in this situation, right? What helps, I think, if you're an Agilist, you're open to change. And what a lot of people do is they try to improve the situation they're in instead of changing the situation to another situation. And so don't do the little bits of improvement, but really make a change. And I've been experimenting, for the last couple of months in my house as well. Also, I spend a lot of time in South Africa trying to redefine my workspace. And one of the things that I really forced myself to do, which was new from when I'm here, I just bought some gym materials and I go to my own gym in the garage these days. And I force myself, which I never did in the past. Because your physical shape is different when you are sitting in and around the house all the time. In the Netherlands, it's not even that bad. But so instead of improving where you are, change the situation and experiment and keep on doing that. I think that's what we do, right?
That's really good advice. We'll go on.
I like the idea that a lot of the benefit we've had from Agile is people working in little rooms together. Well, we have little rooms, but to get them to work properly in an Agile context, we need high cadence interactions. So rather than thinking about, well, I need to have a meeting with someone as a transaction, think about it as a relationship and keep up the cadence. So for example, Alistair talked about skiing. Well, last week I had a business meeting from a surf ski in the middle of Byron Bay. You can do that these days, but do it. Doesn't matter if you're pedaling a surf ski or if you're out on the slopes. Make certain that you keep regular contact with the people that you're working with.
Yeah. I want to jump in and add one more thing here to the mix of really good advice that people have been giving. And someone just said in the chat, dealing with uncertainty. I think that the pandemic is helping us see our habitual ways of clinging to our belief in certainty and permanence. And it's just really clear that things are uncertain and nothing is permanent. Yet, as human beings, we don't really love that so much. So for me, I've really been paying attention to what are the anchor points that I cling to, and what about clinging to them is keeping me from moving to the next level that I could potentially move to. And, in a nutshell, this is really what's going on with Agile's influence in the world, is that Agile is helping us see the places where we cling. I work most often now with leaders and leadership teams who are, in most cases, in a bit of pain because they know the ways they have been working aren't a match for our new world. We talk about VUCA all the time, but I love this new thing that I just learned about that Harvard Business Review published in December called 3D change, that it's pervasive, it's perpetual and it's exponential, and humans are not actually geared for any of those very well. So we're up for we're up for a leap. I think that's what's going on. We're up for a leap as humanity. And I think it's really cool and horrible that we get the chance to look at the places that we want to cling to certainty. Boy, I can feel it in myself.
So if I could pop in here, Agile, as we wrote it, is pretty much geared to extroverts. There's all this communication. So introverted developer types, really have this problem that they're suddenly being told they have to communicate and talk and all the rest of it. So we take the question, what is it that keeps you, sane or safe during the COVID time? We tend to see the advice about go out and make connections. But when I look at the posts by some of the introverted people, they're home, they're grooving, they're happy. They finally have got the life they want. So if we look at neurodiversity as a topic, right, we have to watch out that I'm extroverted. So I naturally, gravitate towards suggestions like what I was going to say, to what Peter and Ari said, those were all work-related connections. And so I was about to say, go for the non-work related connections. We set up literally for the heart of Agile, we set up a coffee corner every Wednesday at noon, USA East Coast time, hour to an hour and a half of just chat, literally just chat, right? About anything. So you reach out, but then it occurred to me, that's all extroverted recommendation, right? What do the introverts do? I'm not an introvert, I can't say, but they have their own, right? So you find your touch points, what brings you warmth around that. And the other thing is the introspection. All the people, when I ask periodically, so what have you gained from 2020? Every positive answer was, I had time to introspect. I looked at my values. I developed myself. All of the positive things are around the introspection. And I guess the people who are unhappy, I can't say they didn't introspect, whatever, but that's the general pattern I get from the positive answers. So those are the two things I wanted to pop in.
I hope it's okay to jump in. I'll start with one final comment. I know this one's just been really, it's a really important topic. I think we have to be intentional about being positive because there's a lot of stuff that's bringing us down mentally and emotionally right now. And just to be vulnerable, and I'm sure all of you guys have been through this, but last year was the first year that I had to lay off people from my company. And I doubted myself as a leader. Like, it made me really pause, like, do I really know what I'm doing? Because you have to pivot, as Gabriella said, you have to pause and pivot and change your direction. And it makes you doubt yourself, it makes you question. And being intentional about being positive, because there's so much negativity hitting us every day. And I'm just showing you one of the things that I look at every day in front of me, which is she believed she could, so she did. This, and I wear it also as a bracelet, but I have to anchor myself around being around positive people and thinking positive thoughts. And every time something negative comes across, translating it into, what am I going to get out of this? What am I going to learn from it? I just wanted to end with that because I think it's very important to be intentional about being positive.
Thanks, Sally. That was brilliant. I always love it when you kind of just start to have a kind of like a mini conversation amongst yourselves and you just build on the conversation. I think it's wonderful for everybody to witness and hear it and take their own insights from it. So no, thank you for that. Can we take a few more questions, Shelby? What else have we got? What else have we got on the board?
Oh, we
just before that, Saf, have we got a hashtag or something that we could maybe communicate on Twitter to each other about? I didn't know what it was.
Yes, sorry, Scott. I have been trying to ask questions, and I'm also the lovely lady behind the tweets at the moment. So all your lovely shout outs tonight have come directly from me, and I'm trying to catch up with everybody. But if you'd like to use, everybody, my Agile20Reflect, that would be absolutely amazing. Obviously, make sure that you tag us at Agile20Reflect.org. That would be absolutely great. And it's just popped into hashtag has just popped.
I was going to say, well, if you stick it in the chat, we also showed it on a slide at the start. But yeah, good shout, Scott. Good shout.
Thanks, Scott. And thank you to everybody. That would be great if you could just tweet, and I hope I tweeted well for you to this evening. One question to Roman. So there's a question on the board that says we are currently focusing on bringing together product and engineering at a program level, and are meeting great resistance from the product team. There's a great lack of trust. How would you recommend us building that?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to take that. I mean, fire all the product managers and bring in agile product owners. I'm joking. Could resist. I mean, I think it's a lovely question. Thank you for asking it, because it sort of touches upon, again, what was mentioned a few times in the conversation over the past 1.5 hours, or good hour or so. And that is, I don't think we're gonna be able to benefit from an increased agility in agile practices if we don't treat each other as human beings. And so if there's a trust issue, well, we have to build trust. How do we build trust? Well, a key way to build trust is to empathize with the product group, the product managers, the product people, and try and understand why they may be hesitant, why they see some barriers, and understand their situation, understand in a way their needs, their goals. And be honest, act with integrity. That's another great way to build trust. And, by doing so, by developing empathy and being honest, and communicating intention and plans, getting to know them. And again, that'd be another trust building factor. So I think it's really a relationship building exercise ultimately, rather than, something that I've done in the past, going and lecture. I mean, that can be tempting, right? I mean, particularly if you feel, oh my God, they're not getting it. And why are they so hesitant? Why do they resist a change that is going to be positive for all of us? And it can be then easy to feel sort of a little bit righteous and, want to teach people. But I think it's better probably first to try and listen, actively listen and understand and empathize, and then try and find a way forward together.
Can I add one small thing? There's a mathematics to trust that John Nash worked out. There's a website called The Evolution of Trust, which there's a beautiful simulation about mathematics. Go and have a look at that. The biggest factor that you can change as an agilist is to do with reward models that actually motivate trust. But go look at that site, you'll figure it out.
What's that site again?
The Evolution of Trust. It's by a fellow named Nick Case. Beautiful animations and really interesting, deep outcomes. Very simple math.
We'll try to get that out as well on the.
Thank you, Gabrielle.
I want to just build on what Roman said, is that I think we have to be empathetic to where people are and meet them where they are. Because nobody really likes having an outsider come in and tell them, you've been doing it all wrong, or tell them how to do their work. That breaks trust. Because when people start, they have no idea if this newcomer understands them or can help them in any way, just as the outsider or newcomer has no idea what the capabilities and struggles and values of the team are, right? So I think sometimes, rather than coming in with the agile, we should come in with trying to understand and then trying to do the smallest thing we can that actually helps the team from where they are. And that will build some trust, and that will start some rapport. And then you can maybe steer things in another direction.
That is some really great, that's just awesome. I completely agree with you. And that, I suppose, leads really nicely to the next question, and it's directed for Peter. It says, is Agile a mindset for everyone, or are there people that were just born to do it?
Oh, goodness. I don't think anyone was born to do anything. We're all learning. I guess I would suggest, we often talk about the eternal beginner, that we don't want to think in terms of shu-ha-ri, but mu-hin shu, which is to say the evolution of a learning ecosystem where we work together as peers to learn, and learning flows through that ecosystem. By ecosystem, I mean a network of mutual benefit. And I see what we are doing here today as a beautiful exemplar of that kind of mutual benefit. So just in this conversation, the way we've been pinging around, you're not born to do that. We're all born to do that.
Yes, we are born. I totally believe that myself. Excellent question. And that then I've got two questions now that are going to, one's going to go to the beautiful Ellen. So it says, if you had one wish for Agile, what would it be? But there's a slight add-on to that, because I think that's been asked generically for everybody, but I'd like to come to Ellen for that, if possible, please, first.
So ironically, I think my one wish for Agile is that we stop talking so much about Agile, because that creates the idea that it's a monolithic one way of doing things, right? It's a very, very useful label to describe a lot of things, but I find it gets, you know, like when Ari said earlier, as soon as we put that word software in, we start to, you know, messes our minds up. A lot of the times when we start talking about Agile, it messes our minds up. And if we can just kind of set it aside and start to focus on what are the problems we're trying to solve? How can we better notice what are the things that we're doing that are working, and how can we amplify them without getting caught up about whether it's Agile or not Agile or what kind of Agile it is? That's really my wish for as we take this conversation forward. Let's focus on, you know, it goes back to that very first line of the manifesto. We are uncovering better ways of doing things together. Paying attention to what are we uncovering and worrying a little less about what we label them.
Any of our other patrons have a thought?
Yeah, I did, but because the conversation kind of evolved a bit, can you give me the original question again?
So the original question was, bear with me, Dr. Alistair Coburn, bear with me. If you had one wish for Agile in 2020, oh, it says 2022, what would it be?
Yeah, obviously drop the software. What I do in an organization, if I go there and literally it was a big company and they go, really smart, really senior people will say, how do we get this company to be more agile? And I said, I think you're asking the question wrong. Allegedly, Agile gets you something. If you just try to focus on what making the company what you think the word Agile is, you're aiming at a wrong target. So you'll get to whatever you think that is, and that won't be the thing that gets you the thing that you think you want. So how about you say, if we had Agile, we were that, what would we get? And a name straight for that. And then the Agile library of tricks, which is in fact all it is, right? So just to regroup on the manifesto, the key word in the manifesto is the word uncovering. All the stuff predated. By definition, all of it predated. Crystal clear came out of my interviews from people in 1991, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So that stuff was there in 91, 2, 3, 4, 5. Gabrielle Benefield was doing this stuff in the 90s. They didn't have a name. People like me interviewed people like her, wrote down what they were doing. So it's a bag of tricks, and the values of the manifesto are like, there are no doubt 200 really important things. We cherry picked 4, right? And it's an awesome team experience. I often ask people to do. Get your team, your company together and just say, everybody, you get to pick 3 to 5 things. You have to live with them forever. That's all you get. What are you going to pick and live from them? 3 to 5. We happen to choose 4, right? And you could get different things, but it's like you've cherry picked and said, if I have to like hang my hat on these things and live with them forever and I don't get anything else, I'll hang my hat on these. And we chose those 4. So, and then behind that are all this bag of tricks that we use. So if you go, we want to get there, and there's this bag of tricks. What out of this bag of tricks is useful? And oh, by the way, there could be other tricks that could be useful and get, but let's focus on the there and not this funny target that we labeled, right? So that's would be my wish. And I see people nodding. So like anybody who's been around for a bunch is like tired of aiming at you give it a tag word, but then people focus on the tag word and they miss the picture of what they're trying to get at. Yeah, I see Ellen. Hi, Ellen.
Thank you. My next question is actually for Gabrielle. So it says, Gabrielle, at Snowbird in 2001, what if 50% were women? How different would the manifesto be?
No, I saw that one. That just made me laugh. And I thought, well, it would have been a lot cooler. It would have been laid out a bit better, you know, but it's always amazed me. I keep wanting, actually, it's something for you, Alistair. I've always wanted to know, how come there were no women there? I'm sure you've been asked this, but I'm like, damn, I should have just had my skis around that day and popped in because,
All right, so
you know,
because
why?
I just was asked that question yesterday, and I'm tired of being an apologist. I just want those of you around, name all the women who were published methodologists in the pre-agile light process world in 1999.
Well, what about Mary Poppendick? Wouldn't she have been
She wasn't
published?
around at
Was
the
she
time.
published?
She wasn't known. Her book came out in 2003.
Did it? Okay. And
Right.
why is
Maybe
that?
I can jump on this.
Yeah, do
Why
it.
were we
can-
so late to the game? Go ahead. Sorry, Ari.
Yeah, maybe I can jump on this because I don't know who made the list of invitees when we wrote the manifesto, right? I just don't know.
That's Bob
But I
Martin.
know that
Bob.
at least the story says that there were a couple of people more invited, and some people said no because they didn't want to spend the weekend with a couple of guys in a sweaty room. But I also know that one of the leading ladies in the DSDM world, and I represented DSDM when we wrote the manifesto, was asked before me. And I don't even know what the motivation was not to go, but she decided herself not to go. So that doesn't mean.
Yeah, what's her name, Ari? She's the only person that I knew in the DSDM community.
Jennifer Stapleton.
Yeah, that's right. Wonderful person.
Yeah. And I don't say that if we would have this one lady in the group that all of a sudden it would have diversity. No. It was a very white male group in that room. It's what it is. We can't change that anymore. Sorry.
Yeah, but getting back to the original question, what would have been different? I think that's actually an interesting question. And I don't know. I mean, with all these this idea that whenever we segment things into male, female, whatever it is, we're categorizing, and God knows what would have been different, because maybe it would have been exactly the same. At the end of the day, we're giving voice to something that's out there. So sometimes I think by continuing to segment, we segment further. What would have been different? I don't know. If I'd been there, I don't know what would have been different. Yeah, we could have toppled the whole thing. Who knows? It's like sliding doors. We might not have had a manifesto, right? We might have had something different. So that's I don't know.
Can I pop in here? There's two things.
Yeah.
One's the invitation list and one's how the manifesto looks different. So Bob Martin had the invitation list. So I was organizing a workshop in Snowbird at that same time, February in Snowbird. I was modeling it after things we did in the 90s called Workshop on Object-Oriented Design Wood. So the way it looked, the way it was structured was exactly to copy and extend the wood workshops that we held in 94, 95, 96, 98. And I figured it was time to do it again. And as I was starting to organize that, Bob Martin wrote an email and said, I want to do this thing with the manifesto and stuff, February in Chicago. And I looked at his invitation list, and he had Tom DeMarco in there, and he had Grady Booch in there, and his invitation list was better than my invitation list, and his topic was better than my topic. So I just decided to throw in with him, right? I said, but I'll organize it. And then we had a choice between Chicago in February and Snowbird in February. And between you and me, and the brick wall and the 10,000 people who are going to look at the video, Jim Highsmith was living in Salt Lake at the time. We had both been traveling too much. Neither of us wanted to get on a plane and go to Chicago in February. So we basically hijacked and said, well, we'll organize it if you hold it at Snowbird, right? And if you don't hold it in Snowbird, we're not getting on a plane anyway. So we like sat on the location. And then I organized it and I modeled it after the wood, which is why there was afternoon skiing and all the rest of that. But it was his invitation list, and I didn't look at it. I didn't pay attention. And it hurts me a lot because Rebecca Wiersprock should have been there, because Rebecca Wiersprock was at every wood workshop, 94, 96, 97, the one I organized in Norway, 98. She was there, she was in the conversation the entire time. And had I been organizing, she's on the top of my list. I didn't notice that she wasn't there. The only other person I know of was Adele Goldberg, but she just wasn't in the circuit. She wrote the book and then got out, right, and passed the torch to Kenny Rubin. And somebody just mentioned, Esther mentioned Martine DeVos, who's excellent. And she was semi in the circuit, but wasn't well enough known to be on the list of the lists, right? You'd have to dig a bit to find her. Those are the only three women that I know. The other thing I want to get to is how would the manifesto look different? So what was very unusual, so people harassed that there were white males in the room, and rightly so. If you look at the pictures of all of us, it's a very white, middle-aged male group. But I will say that the thing that you think about when women are going to be present, that characteristic that you imagine that women bring to a pile of men talking is women listen better. That's really, to me, that's the kind of the stereotypic thing. That's what you inject women into a session because you want the men to stop talking and the women, to listen to each other, right? And soften the conversation. That was the best listening meeting I've ever been to in my life. There was the most generous listening in there where nobody dissed anybody else at any time. Anybody had a point of view was honored in a very full way. So in that sense, as we said at the end, if you'd swapped anybody out for anybody, like if Tom DeMarco had been there, if Grady Booch had, it would have been a different story top to bottom. Everything would have been different. So if you put a woman in, everything would have been different. It wouldn't have been more different because it was a woman. It would have just been a different conversation. But
Can I add on this, Alistair?
But the magic of the meeting was the quality of the listening. That was, who?
Can I add a little bit on this, Alistair?
Hey, you were there in the room.
Could we hear?
Yeah.
Ari, could we hear from some of the women?
I was just going to say, I'm hoping to bring this particular debate to close. It's been fabulous and it's great to hear all your opinions. But to be honest, I'm sure this one's going to come up again and again over the course of the month in various other events.
Except, Seth, you have the unusual situation of two people who were in the room. So it would be a sin not to hear what Ari has to say.
Absolutely. And then I think we'll move on if that's okay. Ari, please.
Well, I tend to make a joke right when you're in front of a group and I ask, what happens if you put 17 guys in a room? And then very often from the audience, ladies will shout back, nothing. Right, so that's the first one. But I always say then the follow-up line is, most of the time when you put guys together in a room, 17 guys, everyone will try to explain to the other 16 that his idea is best. And I agree with Alistair that this was about listening and giving space to each other, and that's unusual. So I think I don't know what would have been differently. I have no clue. It has even no value to speculate. But I do know that the listening was on a high level that time. It was really good.
Can I tell a funny story though? I was having breakfast with Martin Fowler and Jeff Sutherland one day, and Jeff is this optimist, and we were talking about the manifesto, and he went, oh yeah, it was fantastic. These 17 people came together, we discussed it for days, and out of it emerged this wonderful, beautiful manifesto. And Martin, who's fairly, he's very English and sort of slightly direct, but great. He just looked at Jeff and went, that's not how I remember it. He said, I remember us arguing and debating for 3 days. And by the end, we were so exhausted. The only thing we could agree on was the Agile Manifesto. So that was interesting.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Gabrielle. No, it's good to hear all those perspectives. We have about 9 minutes left. I need about 4 minutes or so just to wrap up. So maybe we've got a couple of questions, maybe. Shelby, Sabrina, maybe. Shelby, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Sorry, everybody. I do have one quick question for Lisa. It says, "What is a true role of a senior leader, C-suite executive within an agile organization? How can senior leaders help to make everyone feel like they have a place within that agile space?"
There's a lot to say about this. The thing that I'll pick up on is that senior leaders themselves have their own agile transformation, if you will, to go through, but it's different than what team members go through. The big shift that senior leaders, I think we are all going through in general, but it's really endemic in senior leadership because of how they've been rewarded, is this shift from solving problems and being reactive to problems to understanding that their job is to create environments. That's a really huge, huge shift. I mean, I have such compassion for how big a shift that is. And so that's like a meta shift that goes on with C-suite executives who really want to leverage Agile for the business results they're trying to get, right? Not for its own sake. And how that looks, how that moves down into the organization, into all the different ways that they will then behave is very specific to what the organization's up to and what the executives are doing. But I think that if an organization is serious about leveraging Agile and having its full promise come forward, then no one's going to follow an executive who hasn't been in a change process themselves. And I think this is what executives are starting to understand, at least the ones that I'm working with these days. And it's not a short road for sure.
And then I think and this is addressed to all the famous ladies that are on this call. As women, we know that we are sometimes hindered in this great world of men that work in our industry and realm. How do we combat that as women? How do we come together to have that voice just to support us and say that we are just as strong as the men that we work with?
We do it by not being like them. So what I am advocating these days is for us to educate ourselves on both the feminine and masculine energies, both the yin and the yang energies, and for us to all be more integrated human beings. And so for some women, that means picking up more assertiveness or more directionality. For some women, it means picking up more nurturing and harmonizing and being able to move into the shadow and the depth. And that is the incredible value of the yin energy that we have been missing so much for these last 150 years in business. So my heart is racing right now because I really want to advocate for integration, not for one over the other. If we simply replace female chauvinism with male chauvinism, we've not gotten anywhere new.
What I would add to it is be okay with showing up as your full self. One thing last year has definitely taught me, especially as we looked at people of color, the Black community in the space, is that we have been silent quite often and not speaking up when we've been harmed or in different ways. By being more communicative and sharing and understanding that yes, it could have some negative results to it, but be okay with that, to walk in your full self, and that we may be surprised.
Esther? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Shelby.
And I was going to say it's the same just quickly to you, Esther, and to you, Sally.
Yeah, I was just going to share that being a Black woman from Sudan, being a Muslim, living in a country during September 11th and you know how Muslims were being perceived, there was a lot of reasons for me to feel like I was being rejected. There was a lot of reasons for me to not speak up, but I didn't. I always spoke up. I always, like April said, was myself. I never looked at that. I never looked for it. I think that's important, is I didn't look for it. So even when it did hit me sometimes, I ignored it and I just moved forward in a very confident way because I believe in myself and I believe in God and I believe in the path forward. So just having that, it's not arrogance, but confidence, loving yourself, nurturing yourself, showing up as who you are. I was in a session with a lot of executives and I had to be honest and truthful about being a Muslim. And that was my moment of coming out because I had never spoken openly and honestly about my faith because it was being attacked in that moment. And I had to speak up and that took so much courage from me. But that was the day that I grew up as a leader, not just as a woman, but just as a leader, being myself. So just, you know, don't look for it, be who you are and be confident and comfortable in your own skin.
Fantastic. Ellen, did you want to just add to that quickly for a wrap up?
Just a couple of words to wrap up what people said. Show up, claim your space, and help others to do so. That's how we all move forward.
Fantastic.
Can I add one quick thing? Because I've been actually dwelling a little bit on the why weren't they published, right? The systemic calls for the manifesto. And something I noticed, so I've got a teenage daughter, she's incredibly smart, like she's just brilliant, but there's a self-deprecation that goes on. And so I think for women, the advice I'd say is be okay being better and being as good, and recognize that, because I think it holds us all back. I think it's really ingrained that, and there's so much research showing that women are often 2 or 3 times better, and yet they are subordinate to other people who aren't. So be okay being better and being as good as you are. It's okay to be like that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I would just echo the thought that
Sorry,
you don't have to imitate men to be successful, right? And a lot of companies, say they want to bring in more gender balance, and then they hire a bunch of women and expect them to act just like the men, and they are criticized for, they don't get in there and duke it out in meetings. Well, that's because they've been working behind the scenes to build consensus, So I think, don't try to imitate, but also try to explain that there are many ways to get things done. We have in the business culture been predominantly exposed to one way of getting things done. Women very often, this is a generalization, very often bring a different energy and a different way of accomplishing things because of the way we're socialized. So help people appreciate that.
Yeah, so many powerful messages there. That is incredible. We're right up to time. I always like to finish on time as those who used to be hosting sessions such as these. We could go on all night. It'd be lovely if we could. Unfortunately, we can't.
There's an opportunity for all women on the call. There's an opportunity for all women on the call to be in the room for the Descaling Manifesto in 1 hour's time. So as an invitation to all of you and other people, please do come along and contribute.
There we go. Quick plug from Peter there. So absolutely.
And we've opened the cafe. The cafe is open. So if anyone would like to talk about anything we talked about, the Discord link's there in the chat, and anyone can come in and chat.
That's a great idea, Scott. Thank you. But no, it has been a tremendous session. I've thoroughly enjoyed hosting it. It's been so thought-provoking, so many powerful messages, such inspiration so early on in the festival. So thank you all. I think it's only fair if whoever's still on the call, I can't see the numbers, if you briefly unmuted and thanked our patrons, our wonderful patrons, for giving up 2 hours of their time and joining us and being so amazing and answering so many questions and sharing their thoughts. It has been fantastic. Thank you all. We are very grateful. We are very grateful. And yeah, there are so many other opportunities, folks, to hear from our patrons. They're all doing different things over the course of the month. Lisa's joining me for a panel discussion on Wednesday. There are so many other things. Alice is doing things. Roman's got sessions. Peter's just mentioned one of his. Gabrielle's got sessions. Sally's doing one with me later in the month. There's so much stuff going on. So do please check it out in the calendar. And thanks for your participation. I couldn't keep up with the chat. It was on fire. There was so much stuff getting shared. It was absolutely brilliant. And I have to give a shout out to my fellow co-hosts, Shelby and Sabrina, who are just awesome, and they did a great job of helping me. I could not have done this on my own. There was just no way, so they definitely deserve a round of applause. And listen, I hope you enjoyed it, and do enjoy the rest of the festival. Learn, let's all be open-minded, make connections, and find a path forward, whatever that looks like for you. But thank you again. Very grateful, and enjoy the rest of the festival, folks.
Thank you, Seth. You did a wonderful job.
You did a great job, Seth.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, guys.